I'm on the train headed back to Indiana. The rain is forming into rivers outside, writing down all the things that I miss, and in the letters you take form. No, I won't go back tonight with the habits of the restless me. I'm leaving all that stuff behind. We can start all over in our hometown, running free. It could be everything that we were chasing. I'm impatient just to see how you make everything fall into place. Yeah, we make you make everything fall into place. You see, ooh, yeah, you make everything. I'm the first one to get off at the station. There's something in the air that I can't place. And now I see a silhouette in the dark. It's like time has stood still. I'm gonna hold you tighter this time around. Now feeling like I need to escape. The world outside only made me numb. 'Cause I just wanna be here in our hometown, running free. It could be everything that we were chasing. I'm impatient just to see how you make it.
Welcome to the Damn Short Film Festival. This is Drama D, Crime and Consequences, and Filmmaker Q&A. My name is Anita Lanier. I am the co-founder and drama programmer, and I am excited to be talking to one of our filmmakers. And let's see, are we up? There we go. Hi there.
Hi, how you doing?
Excellent. And
Good.
introduce yourself and introduce your film and tell us a little bit about your film. What's your one sentence synopsis?
Oh, it's a tough one. But my name is Chester Howie, and I directed and wrote a film called Lulu. And it's like it's a crime comedy, but it's more of a it's more of a close quarters, tense scenario between three friends after they've performed a heist, and their relationships begin to fray as time goes on.
Very good. Yeah, I it's very short. It's like 11 minutes long or something.
11 minutes. Credits, yeah.
11 minutes.
Mhm.
You packed a lot of storytelling in 11 minutes. I mean, that's a lot of storytelling, and in a way, of course, you know, I guess I would, how did you get it down to be so succinct? What was your process?
I'm really, really glad you noticed, because that was pretty much the number one priority for me, was to try to get to try to keep it moving.
Yeah.
The last film I made actually at USC. I did a 3-year course at USC Film School, and I noticed the trend that a majority of the student films I was watching were taking a little too long. They spent a little too long to get from beginning to end, and I was starting to lose my patience. So I thought, you know what, for my very last film, I'm gonna pack in as much as I can, so it's almost enough that you could watch it twice and maybe pick up a few more things on the second viewing. But that was a long process. We were editing the film for 6 months or something, trying to get it down. And using voiceover was extremely helpful. I must have rewritten the voiceover a dozen times before we got it right, but that helped us pack in a lot of information.
Right. But still a lot of showing, not telling, even with the voiceover, I noticed. What were some of the iterations? I mean, with this particular story, did it start out as something else, and did it eventually develop into Friends on a Heist? What was sort of the seed of what became Lulu?
That's a good question. It started originally. It was just meant to be one scene. It was meant to be that scene of them playing cards around the table. Because initially, the reason I made it was not actually a thesis film or a big flagpole production. It was just a class exercise, but it was the very, very last thing I did at film school. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna throw a lot of stuff at the wall and see if anything sticks, and do like as big a production as I can, even though it's just meant to be one scene. And I think I must have heard around the time that I wrote it something about how it's very effective when you begin the film with the ending, or at least whether it's thematically or literally in this case, if you are able to draw a circle from the beginning to the end, it can have quite a powerful effect on the audience. So it kind of just popped into my head, well, what if I start with the end and then play it in reverse to see our main characters finish the film first, then reverse into the house. What's the story there? So that's kind of where it started. I wrote it in an evening, basically, in a flu-induced craze overnight. I typed out the script really fast on the Tuesday night before we started shooting on the Friday. So it was very, very quick. Got as many notes as I could before we started, and then the post-production process was really where we found the story, and that's where the voiceover became integral to telling the story as concisely as we could, and trying to sneak in some information that I hadn't thought of until we'd already shot the thing.
Yeah. And where did you go to school?
I went to USC Film School, the grad school.
Okay, right. Okay. And the actors, when you're at film school at USC, I don't know, are there like a supply of actors in the drama department that you bring in? Do you act in each other's films? Did you do a casting call? How did you cast this film? Because it was really well cast.
Thank you so much. They're amazing. We were so lucky to work with them. USC, funnily enough, has a really great setup in that I think it's the only film school where we were allowed to work with SAG actors, so they could be in the union, but they were still allowed to work with on our short films. So I'd done a casting call for previous films, and I think I'd met all these actors on previous shorts that I'd made, or in Ryan's case, he'd been in a friend of mine's film. And I just phoned them and said, are you free? I'd love for you to be in this film. It only has 3 actors in it, so it wasn't that difficult to cast in a volume sense. And they were all perfect. I couldn't have asked for a better cast. And we had a great time. We actually stayed the weekend in the house that we shot in, all the interiors. And we all had a great time together. It was a really nice bonding experience as well.
Yeah. Where did you find the house?
The exterior is a friend of my parents. They have a place in Malibu, and they were really kind. That they rented out for photo shoots,
it's a nice house.
shoots all the time. Yeah, it's amazing. And I begged them to let us spend an afternoon there. So we went up, I think, on a Friday afternoon, had the exterior of their house for about 6 hours, and then the whole crew got into a convoy of cars and drove to 3 hours to Palm Springs to shoot the interiors at a friend of mine, at my friend's parents' house in Palm Springs. So all the interiors are actually in a completely separate house.
Oh, okay. Wow. Mm-hmm. That's, and I was wondering, so you were talking about, it started out as a scene, and then now it seems like a piece of a bigger story, of course, because it's just suggested what the heist was. And, I don't want to talk about that right now. Have you thought about, are you thinking about fleshing this out to be a feature, or is this something that is, a self-contained story, and now you're moving on to other projects?
I was trying to have my cake and eat it too. I did want it to be its own self-contained story, but deliberately left it somewhat open-ended, because I love the character. I love all 3 characters a lot, and I could see taking them further, and I could see seeing what happened before the film, seeing what happens after the film. I think there's material to be mined there. I am curious about a TV show for it, and I've taken a couple of cracks at a pilot, but then put it away in a drawer and worked on other things. But it's definitely something that keeps cropping up, and I keep thinking, maybe I should look at that Lulu pilot again and see if I can come up with anything fresh.
Right. Yeah, I kind of wonder if as a feature, if it would be the beginning, the end, or the middle. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, she's an interesting character too, the Lulu character. She's very yeah, very ballsy. Not a
Mhm.
lot like her. A bit of an
Mhm.
anti-hero, but likable. I think the vulnerability from the friend's betrayal that comes up, because sometimes every once in a while we notice this in seeing all of our films. I'm a co-founder of the festival, so this is 17 years, and I haven't been a programmer, or I haven't always been on the selection crew from the beginning, but seen a lot of films. And yeah, it's amazing how, something like a 10-minute film can be 8 minutes too long, and after you
Right.
see lots and lots and lots and lots of submissions, it's and I'm sure that you mentioned that being sensitive to
Mhm.
the shortness, or getting the story very, very tight. Um, and I was wondering then, that whole editing process, or the process of kind of creating it in post, was that collaborative in some
Um,
way? I mean, or was it just with your video editor, or how did you flesh that out? How did you bounce those ideas around?
Sure. Well, firstly, congratulations for going through all the films that get submitted, because I imagine it's not always an enviable job, but you do such a fantastic job picking the films, because the ones I've been watching this year have been fantastic. So
Thank
not,
you.
not all heroes wear capes, as they say. But
Thank you.
in terms of the post production and finding it in post production, I worked closely with an editor called Sam Hagemeyer. She and I worked together for a couple months, I think, on cutting it. But then she had to move on to other things, and I still wasn't quite happy with where we had it. I knew that we could do more with the voiceover, especially. And then I kind of hit this creative wall, and I picked up a new job as well. So I actually put the whole project away for about 6 months and didn't look at it. And when I broke out the hard drive again and plugged it back into my laptop, I looked at it with fresh eyes and just kept rewriting the voiceover over and over again. And I'd send the cut to friends. My girlfriend's also a filmmaker, and she gives amazing notes, so I'd rely on her a lot. And just through this kind of feedback, I kept rewriting, rehoning, recrafting until I think we ended up with a really, really good version of the voiceover. But in terms of the picture editing and the style and everything like that, that was very much a two-person job. Me and Samantha did that together.
Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
And did any casting decisions? No, you pretty much cast it ahead of time, and so you'd already worked with everybody ahead of time.
Mhm.
And were you thinking about them as you were writing it as well?
Yes, actually, I actually just realized I tell a lie. Ashley, I did audition. So the Ashley who plays Lulu, I did audition for this particular film. I didn't have anyone in mind when I wrote that character, for any of the characters actually. So we got really lucky that Ashley came in. She was fantastic. As soon as she walked in, I basically thought, yeah, she's got the vibe. I can definitely see her in the role. Ryan and Kelly I'd worked with on previous things before, and they're just such wonderful collaborators, and they bring such energy to their roles and such authenticity, and they're so committed as well that I didn't hesitate. I finished the script and thought Ryan and Kelly would be perfect for these roles. So that was pretty much the casting process.
Yeah. And as far as I guess kind of, well, what about the fight scenes? Did anyone get hurt, or they're just did you have some I don't know, coaching or something to make sure that no one, because I don't know how you do like the headbutt and all of that. How
Yeah.
was
Well,
how was
that was
that?
fairly easy. Funnily enough, because we were staying in this house for the weekend, a couple of us had brought these big inflatable mattresses to sleep on overnight, because the house only had so many beds, and there were maybe 15 to 20 of us all staying in the house, so we needed somewhere to sleep. So when Ashley headbutts Kelly, and Kelly falls down, we'd actually put this huge inflatable mattress behind her, so she could just basically fall backwards onto a bed, and that worked out just fine. The only time that we approached a near injury, weirdly enough, was when Ryan and Kelly kiss. During rehearsals, because it's such an energetic moment, they kind of butted into each other a bit hard during the day before we were rehearsing the scene. So that was the only time where there was a little bit of like a little bit of a minor injury, but luckily nothing major. And by the time the shoot rolled around, we'd worked everything out, and it went just fine.
What were your influences in terms of or who are your influences in terms of filmmaking? Is there any filmmaker or filmmakers you especially admire, whose careers you'd like to emulate?
Oh, hundreds.
Or films?
Hundreds. Yeah, I'm very, very cliched, I'm afraid. I'll name all of the big names. I'll say Quentin Tarantino, Edgar Wright, Guy Ritchie, Steven Soderbergh, Scorsese. All the big famous ones. I like films that bring a level of style, I think, to their storytelling. As long as it's not frivolous and just kind of gratuitous style that does nothing. I really enjoy being reminded of the fact that I'm watching a film and a slightly more a slightly more animated version of films that very much draw me in, and I really admire those types of stories. So that's something that I think about a lot, and not less so in my writing, but more in the directing and the editing. I try to do what I can with the camera and with the edit to make it exciting and energetic. So yeah, those filmmakers and many, many more are definitely influences.
What got you started with wanting to go to USC graduate school? Had you studied film as an undergraduate, or do you come from a theater background, or
yeah?
I
went to UCSB for my undergrad, UC Santa Barbara, and I just on a whim started studying. I was a history major, but took a lot of the film classes. It's mostly film theory at Santa Barbara, film criticism, and kind of just fell into this hole of obsession where it became the thing that was occupying all my attention. Everything else was kind of on the side, and I just became fixated on the craft of filmmaking, on the craft. Why is this filmmaker putting the camera here, and why are they moving it here, and what's the decision being made here behind this edit? And the craft of filmmaking from a very left brain perspective, almost analyzing the craft, was something that just really, really drew me in. I ended up working as a post PA for about a year between undergrad and grad school. And that's when I made a very low, but $200 short film as my application to get into USC. And USC, for some reason, let me in. So I spent 3 years there, kind of cutting my teeth and meeting a lot of fantastic people. And we all learned together and lived and breathed filmmaking for 3 years, which is absolutely unparalleled. There's nothing quite like it, and it helped me in so many ways beyond just filmmaking, and the rest is history. Since then, it's just been kind of a very hard focus on making films and seeing why films work.
Yeah, I think of film as sort of that's the art form, probably the defining art form of the 20th century. I'm not sure if it's going to continue being the defining art form of the 21st century. I mean, where do you see, filmmaking going? Where do you see film going into the future? And you're young filmmakers. I mean, you might be around for another 60 years, or more, maybe 80 years.
Yeah.
It's true. Those filmmakers live a really long time if they take care of themselves,
That's true.
It's amazing how, this long body of work that many of them have, and how much has changed in just probably your own lifetime, certainly in my own lifetime. But where do you see it going optimistically, and where do you see it going pessimistically?
That's a really good question. I'm definitely no authority to listen to for the answer, but thank you for asking. It's funny you mentioned it. I imagine there's lots of people, myself included, who are having this exact conversation with loved ones and with friends right now, because we are definitely in a moment right now where the whole nature of the industry and the entertainment industry is changing before our very eyes. Our habits have been completely thrown through a loop because we're all stuck at home now. There are no movie theaters. There are very few films being produced right now. So everything is completely changing. And the reason I mention that is just yesterday I had Zoom dinner with a friend of mine, and we asked this very question to each other. And I think the optimistic version is that we'll continue to have, everything will go back to the way it was. The pandemic will come to an end, and movie theaters will reopen, and all these great filmmakers will be able to make their films unencumbered and as they see them. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. I think we're going to see tech companies, for lack of a better word, buy up movie theaters, Netflix, Amazon, Apple, Disney, who aren't really tech, and they're going to become more like theme parks, potentially, with gift shops and with experiences, and you go for the day rather than going for a film. And the types of content will no longer be what you and I currently think of as a feature film on that exhibition front. I think there'll be very few people who are making 2-hour films just standalone, outside of the Marvels, outside of the $1 million micro budgets. But on the flip side, I do think we are also entering a phase of incredible television, and that can't be undervalued. I mean, I just watched Big Little Lies, season 1, directed by an incredible director, and he brought his vision to 8 whole episodes. So just because it's not constrained to the 2-hour format doesn't detract any value from it, nor does it add anything. It's just different. And I felt very privileged to be able to watch this man's work over 8 hours. So in that sense, I'm kind of optimistic that TV is going into a great place, and we might see, a lot of filmmakers we've heard of and a lot of filmmakers we haven't heard of bring their talent and their voice to the TV medium, which I'm really excited to see.
Yeah,
I'm really excited to see what that holds.
And that's happening a lot. I mean, just looking through the credits of some of my favorite directors, you'll see that they've directed a few episodes of some, of some TV show that's original content, and you think, wow, okay, they do that too. I mean, a lot of talent is in television. A lot of talent. What about things like VR and deep fake and technology? I mean, if you had the chance to cast, you got like a little deep fake character that you could use however you want, I mean, would you go for that? Or do you think working with live actors would be more exciting, or just having like a little deep fake puppet of some long dead film icon? You have like Laurence Olivier and,
That would be very, very cool. I don't think where my brain
do it, would you?
Stuff is just terrifying. So I don't think I'll even touch it. But that it would be. I can see people using that maybe for like novelty, or I don't know is the answer what the future holds in terms of my approach to that kind of thing. I'm not so sure about VR, but in terms of faking someone's presence, to me, it's like a paradox, because the whole point of watching a visual story, is really we're watching human behavior. And if you don't have a human behaving, then what's the point? I don't like, what are you watching? But in terms of, I think VR is definitely in the early days of some very exciting stuff. I have a friend of mine who's directed a VR film. It's fantastic, and it's definitely a different experience. I think people younger than us probably have a better idea of where it's going. It certainly has a future in the video game world. I think there is something about VR that kind of requires interaction. So I think it probably has more of a future in gaming, but I doubt. I think we're definitely in for a lot of filmmakers having a crack at trying to figure out how to make VR work for storytelling, for linear storytelling.
Yeah. What is your creative process? I mean, you've finished one project. You say you take it out and you put it back. Do you tend to have a couple of different irons in the fire? Do you have things in various phases? How do you generally begin with a project and develop it into something?
That's the $64,000 question. I kind of I definitely have a few irons in the fire all the time. My biggest problem is I'm like one of those birds that are really attracted to shiny objects. Is it crows or ravens? I forget.
Mhm.
I'm like one of those. I start on a project and then I get this other idea and I think, oh, that one looks much more exciting. So I jump over to that one and work on that for a bit. And then another thing will take my attention. I think it's because we don't see the flaws in a new idea yet. So we get very attracted to it. So as of about a year ago, I really started disciplining myself and I said, I'm going to figure out exactly what I'm working on. I'm going to finish writing it and then I'm going to put it down and move on to the next one. So I'm now on I've written a feature, a pilot, and I'm now starting another feature with that method of just really trying to focus in on one thing at a time.
Mhm.
But I'm focusing more on writing now than I am on directing, especially during quarantine. There's not as many opportunities to direct right now.
With a feature that you're writing, or when you write a feature, are you writing it in terms of what is likely to sell, or what is likely, or is a story that that you thought of that kind of needs to be told?
It's definitely not something that I think will sell. I try to be as honest with my voice as I possibly can. I try to get what I find interesting on the page and cross my fingers that someone else finds it interesting. I've seen a lot of people dig themselves into holes over calculating. I think that way madness lies. Trying to predict what people will like and write into it is a fool's errand. I don't think it's really possible because unless you really are passionate about the subject matter, it won't leap off the page if it's not leaping onto the page.
Mhm.
So I definitely just kind of follow my gut, and if I try to write comedies mostly, and if I'm not laughing, it's not in there. I have to make myself laugh, and then I'll get my friend to tell me it's not funny, and then I'll cut it out.
Yeah. And what about it escaped me. So as far as films that that you feel really, oh, I know what I was going to ask about, the history major thing. What period of time did you study? What was your specialty as a history major?
Well, that's one of the beauties of coming to the US to study was I didn't have to. If had I studied in England, it would have been a very, very focused area of expertise, and I would have been absolutely hammering on that for 3 years. But in the US, I was able to kind of take a lot of classes. I would say I mostly studied 20th century American history, but I took all sorts of history classes. It was amazing. It was definitely a broad, diverse learning experience on the whole. And it's what undergrad is for, is really discovering what you like rather than, in my opinion, rather than like really focusing in on one thing. It was a lot of exploration.
How's that tied in much with your filmmaking, with your ideas about filmmaking, times certain epochs that need more storytelling, or ones where you especially like some of the filmic
A little bit.
the
Every
film
now and
stuff?
then I hear of a person or an event, and I think someone should definitely do a film about that. Maybe I'll write a little note down. But then inevitably, it's either been made or is being made or is about to be made. One of them, weirdly enough, I remember I took a class on civil rights, and one of the subjects that was brought up was the trial of the Chicago Seven. I thought someone should make a film about that, and then lo and behold, Aaron Sorkin comes along and does it. Granted, I did have 10 years or something to do it myself, which I didn't. Yeah, those kinds of ideas pop into my head. I every now and then I delve into a little history just for fun, and inevitably there's something that's stranger than fiction that would make an incredible story. I think I don't trust myself to do a good job with a true story just yet. Maybe one day, one day, maybe.
Yeah. So what is next? So you say you've written your a feature, and what is the next step when a film school graduate writes a feature? Do you shop it around? Do you have an agent? What is this process?
So the main process for me is figuring out any and every way I can pay back my student loans. So that's how I spend a majority of my time. I work as an assistant editor as my day job. So a lot of my time is spent doing that. So I've been writing evenings and weekends, and I've set myself a goal that this year I'm going to send what I've written out to managers and agents to hopefully get representation, because ideally I'd love to start working in a TV writer's room. So that's why I'm focusing on my writing, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to use it as a good pitch to get myself into a comedy writer's room, ideally.
Yeah. How has it been, under quarantine? You're living in California with a lot of restrictions. Has this helped with the writing? Has it just, how has this affected you, your creative process?
It's helped me a lot, actually. I mean, I feel bad saying it because it's been a devastating period for everyone, myself included. But one of the very small silver linings is that we've been given a bit more time, I think, not only to reflect on the things we like and to spend time with the people that we should be spending time with, but I'm not commuting anymore, which is fantastic. I now have 2 extra hours every single day. I have more time to write. I have more time to think. And I live with my girlfriend, so I'm not completely alone. So I do have some human interaction, which I feel very grateful for. But it's been helpful for me to be able to find some time for some introspection, and to literally put pen to paper and write. So the quarantine has helped me. The coronavirus, not so much.
Yeah. And as far as what sort of communal activity would you like to once we're all free to be back to normal? I mean, I certainly miss the communal aspect of watching a movie with a bunch of other people in a theater. Are there any other things that you're eager to get back to?
Oh yeah, movies is definitely a big one. I used to go to the ArcLight, and they obviously have a bar there, and I would have a nice snack, have a nice beer or a wine, and go and watch a movie, and that I miss very much. Other things I'm looking forward to doing, seeing friends. I heard about this great way to socialize, where you can get a group of friends around to all read a Shakespeare play together. So that's something that I've had in the back of my mind, but now I'm really antsy to do it because I think it'll be hard online. I want to get some actor friends over and all read a Shakespeare play together. I think that could be a really good laugh.
Just read the whole thing beginning to end.
Yeah. Apparently it takes about 3 hours, and obviously you take breaks, have a few snacks, have a few drinks, socialize. But I think it could be really fun. I've got my eye on A Midsummer Night's Dream. I seem to remember that one being very funny.
Yes, yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
What about you? What are you looking forward to?
Oh, well, having year 18 of the Damn Short Festival be live and in person,
Right,
for one thing, but live theater. I like live theater. We have a number of, we live in the Las Vegas area, so there are a number of very small theaters. They're starting to open up here and there, but I think seeing live theater with a group of humans laughing at the same time and responding at the same time, that is something that I miss dearly. Yeah.
Likewise. And I'm really curious about an earlier question as well, what your take is on the future of film. Where do you think it's going?
I think it's well, I mean, in the far future, I imagine that there'll be a lot more like audience participation in terms of like almost like fan fiction, where people might be able to have the tools to rearrange some of their favorite films, or use use their own creativity and post those. I mean, people can already make films, so there might be more tools to use animation and use pre-made characters for people to come up with their own things. So some of that might be done a lot indoors. But with VR, I'm very excited to see how that could be done to make things very improvisational and interactive, but also, you know, cinematic in some way, where we might be watching each other in our creations, or having experiences that you can only have in a VR aspect. Sometimes, you know, when you have a new technology, they're sort of applying an old way of thinking to that new technology, but really it means, you know, you really have to have almost a whole new way of looking at things. So, I mean, just anything that frees up people's creativity, but more than anything, I just want to see a return to story. The thing that I like the most about participating in our festival and seeing all these shorts is that we choose stories that have heart. We choose stories that have intriguing characters, that have characters that, you know, that we root for, you know, that you're rooting for them. You're saying, you know, yeah, they shouldn't have done that. Good. You know, I'm glad she did that. Or, you know, that we're constantly rooting for the characters. Sometimes Lee and I call this the LA problem. Sometimes we get films from sometimes film school, anyway, where sometimes it's like an unsavory situation with really unlikable characters, and it's cinematically beautiful and everybody looks good and everything's nice. Then we realize, wow, we hate everybody in this film. Right. And, you know, and it might be a short film that had a great future and actually did really well, but we might program it because, like, whoa, this is 15 minutes with some really unlikable characters. So, you know, but we always try to go with, you know, yeah, what has, it's for local audiences. The local audiences, of course, here are very, you know, we all respond to good story. And that's really what I want to see in the future of filmmakers. I just want good stories. I don't need explosions. I don't need giant monsters destroying skyscrapers or cars tumbling over and over and over. But I do need good stories.
Curious for you then.
Well, you know what? If I cared about it, that's the. I mean, you know, it's like it would be okay. I wouldn't mind seeing a car tumbling over, but I have to care about whoever's in the car. Right. You know. Or you know, because sometimes they can actually work in some really good story in those the blockbuster films. But it's all a return to story, like your film, you know, having a good tight story, and that is really, you know, self-contained. I mean, I feel like short films like poetry, you know, it's like you can return to it over and over and always get something new. And it's, you know, nicely self-contained. And it's a very special art form. And I wish there were more venues for it besides film festivals. So hopefully this virtual film festival will open it up to a larger audience.
Fingers crossed. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Chester.
Thank you for
I really
having me.
appreciate your time, and I hope you continue to enjoy all of these films that we've been organizing into the programs for filmmakers and audience members alike. And good luck with
them very much.
Thank you, and good luck with all of your projects.
Thank you so much. Good luck with the festival.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks.